The following is a collection of points that should be kept in mind in considering how the crossroads of Yonge and Eglinton should be developed. First principle is that everything here is very simplistic and not stylistic. It's focused on message. The second principle is to realize that the Yonge subway station will be the only modernized station on the Yonge line, has the opportunity to become the retail service hub for its massive transit ridership. The third principle is about focusing on the different grade levels and how they work together. At present, we have an upper concourse on the Yonge line, and the buses are also at the concourse level, so we can see how these connect. The proposal is to have a deep LRT line and mean that they are lost in transition to what is happening at the Yonge Eglinton Centre. On the other hand, if we work with a shallow line and utilize one concourse alone that is above the Yonge line, then it brings all these LRT east-west riders into a closer relationship with the Yonge Eglinton Centre at street grade and above, and it is how we combine that street and the concourseing together that makes sense. In terms of the retail structure, we need to learn the lessons of what's gone down at Dundas Square, and we can actually bring retail to the Yonge line with its improvement of its platform and the introduction of such things as the on-platform doors. The fifth principle is about what I call marketecture, and this is how the retail structure can be integrated with its surrounds, including the transit below. We see on the west side of Yonge we have a retail engine where RioCan is now, and where Build Toronto is another potential retail engine. East of Yonge is actually where most of the population is that comes to this transit intersection that we call a local neighborhood. And what's been hatched in here now is actually the concourse interconnection between the two stations themselves, and you can see the shape that this requires is basically a wishbone. The retail, once we are below grade, we're able to Build Toronto retail can connect to the concourseing, and we should be looking at how this connects as well to RioCan and again across Yonge Street itself. Ultimately, we can see here that retail can be a major enterprise in one aggregation as long as we do this in a concerted manner, and included in this is to actually utilize much of the excavation of the transit, much of the trench that is left over from the transit work can be applied to this purpose. Principle number 6 is recognizing the amount of development that's going to be occurring at the Yonge Eglinton crossroads. And shown here is the LRT box in general, Yonge Street and duplex, and marked in red are the various developments that are occurring. And when you put these together with the LRT and the improvement to the Yonge platform, we end up with an amalgam of significant, substantial, and contiguous and concurrent development that's going to occur. This truly is a planning exercise of significance. We shouldn't let this opportunity slip by allowing piecemeal development to occur on a postage stamp by postage stamp basis without looking at how they can all be integrated together. Seventh principle is to recognize exactly how this station junction occurs. And we take various examples. We see here Yonge and Bloor is a traditional crossing of the T, and we know how the pedestrian flow is tapered on the upper platform to reach the lower one. On the Bloor, St. George or Bedford stations, we see that these are stacked one on top of each other with very simple connection. The Yonge Eglinton connection is a bit like Yonge Bloor, but it is detached in distance, and it requires a substantial concourse structure to tie the two together. It's a little less complicated than what we have in New York at Houston Station, where we see two tandem stations, and it requires these channels of concourse to connect the two together. Principle 8 involves the critical condition that so many people see as an impasse, and that is there are services on the east side of Yonge Street under the street which bend the present concourse path down and under them and up again. These services, in the magnitude of all the work being done, will be simple to relocate, and if they are, then we can get that full concourse working across Yonge. Last but not least, the matter of the big dig. If we look at the intersection and the properties and the major development interests around these corners, we see what is traditionally a plan map, as we're familiar with. Now, if we introduce a trench that's going to run through for the LRT, which goes to a depth of 20 meters, and start to also sculpt out the spaces for the various developments, including the RioCan portion, Build Toronto, and the northeast corners of Yonge Eglinton as well as duplex in Eglinton. Now you see here I put in the trackage of the Yonge line showing how it goes through this trench, and we see the station location for Yonge Street and the station location below in the Eglinton trench. As well, I've notched out a shoulder or a concourse gap across Yonge Street that connects the Riocan with the northeast corner, and you can see that this is to enable us to get over these track alignments. Adding the shadow gives us a much better idea of the depths involved and the actual shape of the space. Now look at adding into this as well some of the grade conditions to provide again some more detail. Shown in red here is how this concourse ledge works under Yonge Street and how it connects therefore to the corners and down to the Eglinton LRT. We can see here the retail engines of Riocan on the Build Toronto site and the population migration that comes in from the eastern side of Yonge. And now put in here is the broadened concourse as an established below grade significant space. These are all the principles that are necessary to keep in mind on the crossroads. It's really no different than planning anything else. It merely requires the establishment of some very basic datum points and protocols as to how it all fits together. What's most important of all is to make sure that we do plan ahead so that we do not end up in a situation where we preclude our future and force ourselves into solutions that are any less than they could possibly be.